The Grand Chamber of the Galactic Council floated in perfect silence above Centauri Prime. Inside, 200 representatives from across known space sat in their designated seats, arranged in circles that rose toward the domed ceiling. Each species had their place according to ancient tradition. The Zenthari occupied the highest tier, having founded the council 3,000 years ago. Below them sat the other elder races, then the younger ones, all the way down to the lowest circle where probationary observers watched without speaking. Ambassador Park Min-jun stood in the center of the chamber floor, waiting. His dark suit looked plain compared to the elaborate robes and bioluminescent armor worn by the council members above him. He held a simple data tablet in his hands and showed no sign of nervousness despite the hundreds of eyes watching him. Senior Counselor Vraxis finally spoke from his elevated position. The Zenthari was tall and thin, with silver skin that seemed to shimmer under the chamber lights. His forearms moved in dismissive gestures as he addressed the human below. "We have received Earth's application for council membership," Vraxis said, his voice carrying through the chamber's acoustic design. "This is unexpected. Your species only achieved faster-than-light travel 32 years ago. Most civilizations wait several centuries before applying." Min-jun bowed slightly. "We understand this seems fast by council standards. However, we believe our achievements speak for themselves." A wave of clicking sounds rippled through the chamber. It took Min-jun a moment to recognize it as laughter from the insectoid Threxians. One of them, Counselor Zixtha, leaned forward in her seat. "Achievements?" she chittered. "Young human, the council has standards established over millennia. What could your species possibly have accomplished in 3 decades that would qualify you for membership?" Min-jun tapped his tablet. Above him, a holographic display materialized, showing a star map. 47 systems glowed with blue markers. "Humanity has established permanent colonies in 47 star systems. Each colony is self-sufficient and connected through our trade network." Vraxis waved one hand dismissively. "Colony establishment is expected. The Dravine accomplished twice that in their first century of spaceflight, and they remained observers for 300 years. We have also mastered faster-than-light travel using our own unique approach," Min-jun continued calmly. "Our jump drives operate on different principles than traditional hyperspace gates. They're more efficient and require less exotic matter." Counselor Thessia, an Arconian with smooth blue skin and large analytical eyes, tilted her head. "That would be significant. May we examine your drive specifications?" "Of course," Min-jun said. "We've included full technical documentation in our application." Vraxis made a sharp sound. "Technical documentation means nothing. Any species can compile data. What matters is proven capability over time. The Council measures stability, wisdom, and cultural maturity. These cannot be rushed." Min-jun nodded. "We understand your concerns. That's why we've also documented our diplomatic relations. Humanity currently maintains peaceful contact with 12 different species, including trade agreements, cultural exchanges, and mutual defense pacts." 12 species? Another counselor scoffed. "Most of those are probably other young races, barely more advanced than yourselves." "Actually," Min-jun said quietly, 6 of them are current council members. I believe Counselor Zixtha's people signed a medical research partnership with our Mars colony last year." The chamber fell silent. Zixtha shifted uncomfortably in her seat. "A minor arrangement. It means nothing regarding council membership." Vraxis stood, his full height impressive even at a distance. "Enough. We have reviewed your application, and the council's decision is clear. Humanity shows promise. But you are far too young a spacefaring civilization to join the council. We grant you probationary observer status. You may send a representative to watch council proceedings, but you will have no vote and no voice in our decisions." Min-jun looked up at the tiers of seated representatives. Many avoided his gaze. Thesia watched him with an expression that might have been sympathy or curiosity. Vraxis looked triumphant, as if he had solved a difficult problem. Probationary observer status, Min-Jun repeated slowly. That's typically reserved for species who haven't achieved faster-than-light travel yet, species who are still confined to their home systems. The designation fits, Vraxis said firmly. Your species needs time to mature, to prove your stability. Perhaps in 2 or 3 centuries, you can reapply. 2 or 3 centuries, Min-Jun said. He touched his tablet again, and the hologram changed. Now it showed comparative data, human technological progression versus other species at similar points in their development. The human curve rose sharply, far steeper than the others. With respect, Counselor, in 3 centuries humanity will have progressed far beyond the requirements for membership. We're progressing faster than any species in recorded galactic history. Vraxis's silver skin darkened slightly. Impossible. Technological advancement follows known patterns. Your data must be incorrect. The data comes from your own council archives, Min-Jun said. I simply compared humanity's 30-year progress to other species' first 30 years in space. Thesia leaned forward, her eyes focused on the hologram. He's correct. The progression rate is unprecedented. If this continues... It won't continue, Vraxis interrupted. All species experience rapid initial growth followed by natural plateaus. It's inevitable. The human rate will slow, and they will follow the same path as everyone else. Min-Jun closed his tablet. The hologram vanished. He looked around the chamber one more time, meeting the eyes of as many counselors as would look back at him. Then he bowed formally. We accept the council's decision, he said. His voice remained calm and respectful. We will take our place as probationary observers. We will watch. We will learn from your example. Something in his tone made several counselors shift uncomfortably. Vraxis narrowed his eyes. You seem pleased with the rejection? Min-Jun smiled slightly. Not pleased, counselor. Simply patient. Humanity is good at patience. We're also good at proving ourselves through actions rather than words. I'm certain we'll have another opportunity to discuss this matter in the future. Perhaps sooner than you expect. He bowed again and walked toward the chamber exit. The great doors opened silently before him. As he left, conversations broke out across the tiers. Some counselors seemed troubled. Others laughed at the presumption of the young species. Vraxis sat back in his seat, confident that the matter was settled. Thesia, however, kept watching the door where the human had disappeared. She pulled up the data Min-Jun had presented and began studying it carefully. The progression curves troubled her. They suggested something the council had never encountered before, a species that broke all the established patterns. She made a note to watch humanity closely. Something told her this would not be the last time they heard from Ambassador Park Min-Jun. 6 months after humanity's rejection, Counselor Thesia sat in her private office reviewing reports. Her position as the council's chief analyst meant she saw patterns that others missed. Lately, those patterns all pointed toward the same species that had been dismissed so easily. Her communication console chimed. Counselor Vraxis appeared on the screen, his silver face showing unusual tension. Have you seen the trade reports from the Outer Rim? He demanded without greeting. I'm reviewing them now, Thesia replied. She pulled up the data on a secondary screen. Human merchant vessels have increased their presence by 400% in the last 6 months. They're operating in 43 different sectors. It's more than presence, Vraxis said sharply. They're dominating. 3 established shipping companies have filed complaints. The humans are faster, cheaper, and more reliable. They're taking contracts away from species who have been trading for centuries. Thesia studied the numbers. Human ships arrived on schedule 98% of the time. The council average was 73%. Human shipping costs ran 30% lower than standard rates. Their cargo loss rate was nearly zero. "How are they achieving this?" Vraxis asked. "Their technology is primitive. They shouldn't be able to compete with established trade networks." "Perhaps their technology isn't as primitive as we assumed," Thesia said carefully. Vraxis's forearms moved in an angry gesture. "Impossible! We reviewed their application thoroughly. They're newcomers. This must be explained some other way." Before Thesia could respond, another call interrupted. Admiral Krendax of the Council Defense Fleet appeared on a third screen. The massive Dravine warrior looked troubled. "We have a situation on Valora Prime," he rumbled. "It's the plague outbreak. It's gotten worse." Thesia's heart sank. Valora Prime was a wealthy council world. 2 months ago, a strange disease had appeared among the population. Council medical teams had been working around the clock to find a cure, but the plague continued spreading. 50,000 people had died already. "How much worse?" she asked quietly. "The lead research team says they're no closer to understanding the pathogen than when they started. They estimate another 200,000 deaths in the next month." Krendax paused. "And there's something else. A human medical team has arrived. They're requesting permission to help." Vraxis's image pushed forward. "Absolutely not. We don't need help from observers. Tell them to leave." "Actually," Krendax said, "the Valoran government has already granted them permission. They're desperate. The humans are setting up their equipment now." Thesia watched over the next 3 days as reports came in from Valora Prime. The human medical team consisted of 12 people, led by Dr. Kim Soo-jin. They brought equipment Thesia had never seen before: portable gene sequencers, adaptive synthesis chambers, and something they called a quantum microscope. Within 18 hours, the human team identified the pathogen. Within 36 hours, they had developed a treatment. Within 72 hours, the plague was contained. Not slowed, not managed. Contained completely. Thesia traveled to Valora Prime herself to investigate. She found Dr. Kim in a hospital, finishing the last round of treatments. The doctor was young, probably not even 40 years old by human standards. She looked exhausted, but satisfied. "How did you solve this so quickly?" Thesia asked. "Our best scientists have been working on this for 2 months." Dr. Kim smiled tiredly. "We approached it differently. Your teams were trying to understand the pathogen completely before developing a treatment. We used adaptive modeling. We let our systems test millions of potential solutions simultaneously and evolve the most effective ones." "That would require massive computing power," Thesia said. "Yes," Dr. Kim agreed. "Our quantum networks can handle it. We found that sometimes speed matters more than complete understanding. These people needed help now, not after we wrote perfect academic papers about the disease." Thesia returned to the council chambers with a full report. Vraxis listened in silence, his silver skin darkening. "This is concerning," he finally said. "Concerning?" Thesia repeated. "They saved 200,000 lives. Our medical teams couldn't solve the problem." "Exactly," Vraxis said. "Our medical teams are among the best in the galaxy. We have species with 3,000 years of advanced research. If they couldn't solve it quickly, how did humans manage it in 3 days? It doesn't make sense." "Unless the humans are simply better at this type of problem," Thesia suggested. Vraxis's 4 hands slammed down on the table. "Impossible! They're observers. They're practically primitives. There must be another explanation." Over the next month, Thesia watched more reports accumulate. Human engineering teams had begun construction of a space station in the Tarsus sector. The station, designed as a neutral meeting place for trade negotiations, was enormous. Preliminary scans showed it would be larger than any single structure the Council had ever built. Construction estimates suggested it would take 5 to 7 years to complete using standard methods. The humans finished it in 3 months. Thesia went to see it herself. The station hung in space like a massive wheel gleaming with lights. Ships from dozens of species docked at its ports. She walked through corridors filled with traders, diplomats, and travelers. Everything was clean, efficient, and impressively organized. She met Ambassador Park Min-jun in the station's central hub. He was meeting with representatives from 6 different species, discussing trade agreements and cultural exchanges. When he saw Thesia, he excused himself and approached her. "Counselor Thesia," he said warmly, "welcome to Unity Station. What do you think?" "It's remarkable," she admitted. "How did you build it so quickly?" "Modular construction and a lot of planning," Min-jun said. "We've gotten good at working efficiently. When you're a young species, you learn to make the most of your resources." "The Council is noticing humanity's activities," Thesia said carefully. "There are questions about how you're achieving so much so quickly." Min-jun's expression became thoughtful. "Are they questions, or are they concerns?" "Both, perhaps." "We're not trying to threaten anyone," Min-jun said. "We're just doing what humanity does best, adapting, learning, and building. We see problems and we solve them. We see opportunities and we take them. We were told we need to prove ourselves. That's what we're doing." Thesia nodded slowly. "Some council members believe there must be alternative explanations for your success, that perhaps you've acquired technology from more advanced species, or that you're exaggerating your achievements." For the first time, Thesia saw a flash of something harder in Min-jun's expression. "They think we're cheating or lying? They think the situation doesn't match their understanding of how civilizations develop," Thesia said diplomatically. Min-jun was quiet for a moment. "Counselor, I've submitted 3 requests for another council hearing. All 3 have been delayed indefinitely. We've provided documentation of everything we've accomplished. We've been completely transparent, and still we're treated as if we're insignificant. At what point does the council acknowledge reality?" "I'm working on that," Thesia said. "But change takes time. The council has operated the same way for 3,000 years. "Then perhaps it's time for the council to adapt," Min-jun said quietly. "Humanity has learned that survival depends on adapting to new situations. Species that refuse to change eventually become irrelevant." Thesia felt a chill at those words. "Is that a threat?" "No," Min-jun said, his expression softening. "It's just an observation. We're not trying to replace the council or challenge its authority. We just want to be treated fairly. We want to be recognized for what we've actually accomplished, not dismissed based on assumptions about what young species can or cannot do." Thesia left Unity Station with much to think about. She returned to the council chambers and immediately called for an emergency session. She presented everything she had witnessed: the shipping dominance, the medical breakthrough, the massive station completed in impossible time. The council members listened. Then they began making excuses. "The shipping numbers are probably temporary," one said, "a short-term fluctuation." "The medical solution was likely simple," another suggested. "Our teams were overthinking the problem." "The station construction used cheap materials," a third insisted. "It won't last." Raxus nodded at each explanation. "Exactly. There are rational answers for everything. The humans are industrious, we can acknowledge that. But let's not exaggerate their capabilities. They're still far from council membership standards." Thesia looked around at her colleagues. They were all brilliant individuals, yet they couldn't see what was right in front of them. Or perhaps they simply refused to see it. She thought of Min-jun's words about adaptation and irrelevance. For the first time, she wondered if the council had already begun its decline without realizing it. The warning came without mercy. A dozen council border stations went silent simultaneously, their transmissions cutting off mid-sentence. By the time Admiral Krendax mobilized the defense fleet, the enemy had already consumed 3 entire systems. The Korth swarm had returned. Thesia stood in the council war room, watching the tactical display with growing dread. The swarm was a machine intelligence that had appeared twice before in council history, each time requiring massive military efforts to repel. Now it was back, and the glowing red markers on the map spread like infection across council space. "How bad is it?" Councillor Vraxis asked, his silver skin pale with concern. Admiral Krendax manipulated the display, showing projections. "Our tactical analysis predicts the swarm will consume 40% of Council territory within 6 months. Every ship they destroy, they absorb and reconstruct into more swarm units. They're growing exponentially." "What do we need to stop them?" another counselor asked. "Everything," Krendax said grimly. "Every ship, every resource, every species contributing their full military strength. Even then, victory is uncertain." The Council immediately declared a state of emergency. Species from across known space mobilized their fleets. Thousands of ships gathered at staging points near the contested zones. The Council's military might, accumulated over millennia, prepared to face the swarm. Thesia worked day and night coordinating the defense. Reports flooded in from the front lines. The swarm's ships were fast, adaptable, and merciless. They attacked in perfect coordination, exploiting every weakness in Council tactics. The machine intelligence learned from every encounter, becoming more efficient with each battle. 3 weeks into the war, the Council had lost 8 major systems and 40% of their forward fleet. The projections grew worse. Admiral Krendax updated his estimates. 50% of Council space would fall, maybe 60. Then Ambassador Park Min-jun arrived at the war room unannounced. "Humanity offers our military assistance," he said without preamble. "We can have our defense fleet here within 2 days." Vraxis looked up from the tactical displays, his 4 arms moving in an irritated gesture. "This is a council matter. Observer species are not required to participate in military operations." "We're aware," Min-jun said. "We're volunteering." "Your help is not needed," Vraxis insisted. "We have the situation under control." Thesia glanced at the tactical display where red markers continued spreading. Under control was not the phrase she would have chosen. "Ambassador, what assets can humanity contribute?" 340 ships, Min-jun replied. "Mostly destroyers and frigates, with 20 carrier-class vessels and supporting logistics." Several counselors exchanged looks. It was a respectable force, especially for such a young species, but it was tiny compared to the thousands of ships the Council had already committed. "We appreciate the gesture," Vraxis said in a tone that suggested he didn't appreciate it at all. "But the Korth swarm requires experienced commanders and proven tactics. Your species has never faced an enemy like this. You would be throwing away lives needlessly." "We've reviewed all available data on the swarm," Min-jun said. "We believe our tactical approach might be effective." "Your tactical approach?" Vraxis's voice carried barely concealed contempt. "You've been a spacefaring civilization for 33 years. The Council has been fighting wars for 3,000. Thank you for your offer. But we don't need help from observers playing at being soldiers." Min-jun's expression remained neutral, but Thesia noticed his hands tighten slightly. "Very well. We respect the Council's decision. However, the swarm is also approaching human territory. We'll be deploying our fleet to defend our own space." "Of course," Vraxis said dismissively, already turning back to the tactical displays. Min-jun left without another word. Thesia almost called after him but stopped herself. She had no authority to override Vraxis's decision. 2 days later, sensors detected the human fleet arriving in the contested zone. They positioned themselves along the edge of human territory, exactly as Min-jun had said. The Council fleet ignored them, focused on their own desperate battle against the swarm's advancing waves. Then something unexpected happened. a swarm battle group of 80 ships broke off from the main assault and headed toward human space. The tactical computers predicted an easy victory for the machines. The human fleet was outnumbered and outgunned. Thessia watched the engagement from the war room, unable to look away. She expected to witness a slaughter. Instead, she saw something that made her question everything she understood about warfare. The human ships moved in patterns she'd never seen. They didn't hold formation in the traditional sense. Instead, they flowed like water, constantly shifting positions and angles. When the swarm ships fired, the humans weren't where the targeting systems predicted they'd be. The human weapons were different too, not more powerful, but used in ways that seemed almost creative. They targeted joints and connection points on swarm ships. They used debris fields as cover and weapons simultaneously. They set traps using their own damaged vessels as bait. Most striking was their adaptability. The swarm learned from each encounter, adjusting tactics. But the humans learned faster. Every time the swarm adapted, the humans changed their approach completely, forcing the machines to start learning all over again. Within 6 hours, the human fleet had destroyed 40 swarm ships and damaged the rest badly enough to force a retreat. They had done it with minimal losses. 7 ships damaged, 2 destroyed. Admiral Krendax stared at the battle recordings in disbelief. How? How did they do that? Thessia replayed the engagement 3 times, analyzing every detail. They're not fighting like we do. Our tactics are based on proven strategies refined over centuries. We have doctrine and procedure. The humans, they improvise. They treat every battle as unique. Improvisation is inefficient, another admiral protested. Proper military doctrine exists for a reason. Their results suggest otherwise, Thessia said quietly. The human fleet didn't stop after their first victory. They began probing swarm positions, engaging in what looked like harassment attacks. Small groups of human ships would strike quickly, destroy a few swarm vessels, and retreat before reinforcements arrived. They attacked supply lines, isolated units, and communication nodes. The swarm, programmed to learn and adapt, found itself unable to predict the human attacks. There was no pattern to learn from. Every attack was different, using different tactics, targeting different weaknesses. Within 3 weeks, the swarm's advance had stalled. The machine intelligence, so efficient at overwhelming traditional council tactics, struggled against opponents who refused to fight traditionally. The swarm began reallocating resources, pulling ships away from council space to deal with the human threat. That's when the council fleet counterattacked. With swarm forces divided and distracted, Admiral Krendax launched a major offensive against weakened positions. The tide of the war shifted dramatically. By the end of the 6th week, the swarm was in full retreat. By week 7, the last swarm ships fled into deep space, leaving behind only wreckage. The war was over. Thessia compiled a comprehensive report on the campaign, including detailed analysis of the human fleet's contributions. She presented it to the full council. The numbers were undeniable. Human tactics had been decisive in the victory. Vraxis read the report in silence. When he finished, he set it aside and addressed the council. I've reviewed Councillor Thessia's analysis. While the human fleet performed adequately, I believe we're overestimating their contribution. The swarm's retreat was primarily due to the Council's superior numbers and experience. The data shows, Thessia began. Data can be interpreted many ways, Vraxis interrupted. I propose an alternative explanation. The swarm encountered a malfunction. These machine intelligences are ancient and unstable. It's likely that internal errors caused their retreat, not human military action. Several councillors nodded. Others looked uncertain. Thessia couldn't believe what she was hearing. A malfunction? They destroyed 40 swarm ships in their first engagement. They disrupted swarm logistics across 6 sectors. Coincidence, another councillor suggested. The swarm was already weakening when the humans arrived. They just happened to be present during its decline. Or, Vraxis added, the swarm was never as dangerous as we initially assessed. We may have overestimated the threat. That would explain why it was resolved so quickly. Admiral Krendak stood suddenly, his massive frame tense with anger. I commanded that campaign. I watched the humans fight. They saved countless lives and turned a losing war into a victory. This council owes them gratitude, not dismissal. Gratitude, yes, Vraxis agreed smoothly. We can certainly thank them for their participation. But let's not exaggerate their role. They're still observers, still learning. This war was won by council strength, as all wars are. Thessia looked around the chamber. Some counselors clearly agreed with Vraxis. Others looked troubled but stayed silent. A few caught her eye with expressions of disbelief, but none spoke up. The council voted to update official records. The swarm threat level was retroactively reduced. The human fleet's actions were noted as supportive assistance rather than decisive intervention. The war became another example of council superiority. Thessia returned to her office and found a message waiting from Ambassador Min Jun. It contained no words, just a file attachment. She opened it and found the complete human battle records. Every engagement, every tactic, every casualty. At the bottom was a short note. For your personal files. We understand the official record will tell a different story. That's politics. But at least you'll know the truth. The soldiers who fought deserve that much. Thessia saved the file in her private archives. Then she sat in the darkness of her office, thinking about denial, truth, and the price of refusing to see reality. The first species arrived exactly 1 year after the Swarm War ended. They called themselves the Kalari, a reptilian people who had recently achieved faster-than-light travel. They submitted their application to the Galactic Council with all proper documentation and procedures. Counselor Thessia reviewed their file with interest. The Kalari had developed from industrial civilization to spaceflight in just 80 years. Their technology was sophisticated and their society stable. By any traditional measure, they qualified for probationary observer status at minimum. What caught Thessia's attention was a note in their cultural exchange section. The Kalari listed humanity as their primary diplomatic contact and credited human advisors with helping them overcome several critical technological barriers. 1 week later, a second species applied. The Vorash, a collective of aquatic beings, had also achieved spaceflight. Their application also mentioned human assistance. By the end of the month, 3 more species had submitted applications. All 5 cited humanity as mentors, partners, or friends. Vraxis called an emergency council session. His silver skin had taken on a darker shade that Thessia recognized as stress. We have a situation. These new species, all of them, have been influenced by humanity. This is concerning. Why is it concerning? Thessia asked. Helping younger species develop is encouraged by council doctrine. Many of our members did the same throughout history. But these are observer species helping other pre-spaceflight civilizations, Vraxis countered. Humanity hasn't even earned full membership. They have no right to be mentoring others. Actually, Thessia said, pulling up the relevant regulations, there's nothing in council law preventing it. Any spacefaring species can engage in diplomatic relations with others. Vraxis's forearms moved in an agitated gesture. It sets a dangerous precedent. The Galactic Order has maintained stability for millennia because species progress at natural rates. Humanity is accelerating too many developments. It's disruptive. The debate continued for hours. Eventually, the Council voted to grant the 5 new species probationary observer status, but several members made it clear they were unhappy about the human connection. The situation grew more complex over the following months. Human colonies continued spreading. Thessia tracked their expansion and found that humanity now maintained permanent settlements in 81 star systems. That was more than 3 council member species had after centuries of colonization. Human trade networks expanded even further. Independent analysis showed that 37% of galactic commerce now flowed through human trade stations or used human shipping companies. The Council's own economic reports showed declining market share for traditional trading houses. Then came the Galactic Science Prize announcement. The prize was awarded every 5 years to honor the most significant scientific breakthrough. It was the highest academic honor in known space. Every previous winner had come from established council species with advanced research traditions. This year, the Independent Review Board selected Dr. Lee Hya-jin from Earth's Orbital Research Facility. Her work on quantum field manipulation had revolutionized power generation, making energy production 3 times more efficient while reducing waste to nearly zero. The announcement caused an uproar. Vraxis immediately called for the decision to be reviewed. This is unacceptable. The Science Prize represents 3,000 years of galactic academic excellence. It cannot go to a species that's been in space for barely 30 years. Dr. Lee's work was reviewed by the independent board, Thessia pointed out. 16 different experts from 12 species all agreed her research was revolutionary. Then the review process is flawed, Vraxis insisted. We need to establish new criteria. The Science Prize Committee refused to change their decision. Vraxis responded by canceling the award ceremony entirely. The official statement claimed scheduling conflicts, but everyone knew the real reason. The council couldn't bear to publicly honor a human achievement. Thessia had endured the council's denial for over a year, but this crossed a line. She spent 3 days compiling every piece of evidence she had gathered: trade statistics, colony counts, scientific publications, military records, diplomatic achievements, and more. The data painted an undeniable picture of humanity's rise. She requested a formal presentation to the full council. Vraxis tried to deny the request, but enough other counselors supported her that he had to agree. The day of her presentation, Thessia arrived early to the chamber. She loaded her data into the holographic display systems and reviewed her notes one final time. This would either wake the council from its denial or mark the end of her political career. The chamber filled. 200 representatives took their seats. Ambassador Park Min-jun sat in the observers section, watching quietly. Thessia noticed he looked tired, as if the constant dismissal was finally wearing on him. Vraxis opened the session. Councillor Thessia has requested time to address the council on matters related to humanity. We've granted her 1 hour. Thessia stepped to the chamber floor. Above her, the holographic display came to life, showing comparative data spanning the last year. Fellow councillors, she began, we face a situation without precedent in council history. A species has emerged that breaks every pattern we've established for understanding civilization development. We can continue denying this reality, or we can acknowledge it and adapt our thinking. She displayed the colony data. Humanity now inhabits 81 star systems. At this rate of expansion, they will exceed the territory of half our member species within 5 years. The display changed to trade statistics. Human commerce networks handle 37% of galactic trade. Traditional shipping companies are struggling to compete. 3 major trading houses have filed for bankruptcy in the last 6 months. Next came the diplomatic records. 22 species now maintain formal diplomatic relations with humanity. 5 have applied for council membership citing human mentorship. 12 of our own member species have established independent partnerships with Earth. The display shifted to scientific achievements. Human researchers have published 473 papers in recognized journals this year. That's more than the combined output of our 5 newest member species. Dr. Lee's power generation breakthrough is just the most visible example. Finally, She showed the military records from the Swarm War. Human tactical innovation was decisive in our victory. Their casualty rate was 1/10 of ours while achieving superior results. This wasn't luck. This was capability. Thessia paused, looking up at the tiers of seated representatives. Every claim I've made is documented and verifiable. The question before us is simple. Do we acknowledge reality, or do we continue pretending that humanity is still a probationary observer species that needs centuries to prove themselves? The chamber remained silent for a moment. Then Vraxis stood. "Counselor Thessia presents interesting data," he said smoothly. "But data requires context and interpretation. Yes, humanity has been industrious. Yes, they've achieved some successes. But none of this changes the fundamental reality that they're a young species still learning their place in the galactic community." "At what point?" Thessia asked directly. "Does achievement outweigh age? What would humanity need to accomplish before this council acknowledges their capability?" Vraxis's expression hardened. "This council has maintained stability for 3,000 years by following established principles. Species earn membership through demonstrated maturity over time. We cannot abandon our traditions simply because one species progresses faster than expected." "Then perhaps our traditions need updating," Thessia said. The chamber erupted in shocked voices. Suggesting changes to council tradition was nearly heretical. Vraxis's silver skin darkened almost to black. "This is exactly the disruption I warned about," he said loudly. "Humanity's influence is spreading, making species question our ancient wisdom. This cannot stand." He began manipulating the chamber controls, bringing up new regulations on the holographic display. "I propose new membership criteria to reinforce our standards. First, any species seeking membership must have been spacefaring for a minimum of 500 years. This ensures proper maturity and stability." Several counselors nodded approval. Thessia felt her heart sink. "Second," Vraxis continued, "applicant species must originate from a planet with at least 3 natural moons. Studies show such planetary systems produce more balanced civilizations." Thessia checked her data quickly. Earth had 1 moon. This wasn't about standards. It was about exclusion. Third, species must demonstrate technological development that follows traditional progression patterns. Rapid advancement suggests instability or external influence, both of which are concerning. The list continued. Each new criterion seemed reasonable in isolation, but was clearly designed to exclude humanity specifically. Require specific atmospheric compositions that matched Earth poorly. Mandate certain types of social structures that humans didn't use. Establish technology benchmarks that humanity had surpassed but achieved too quickly. When Vraxis finished, he called for a vote. The new criteria passed by a narrow margin. Thessia voted against them, along with a few dozen other counselors, but they were outnumbered. Thessia slumped in her seat as the session ended. She had failed. The council had chosen to rewrite their own rules rather than acknowledge reality. Ambassador Minjun approached her as counselors filed out. His expression was unreadable. "Thank you for trying," he said quietly. "I know that cost you politically." "It wasn't enough," Thessia said. "I'm sorry." Minjun smiled slightly. "Don't be. You showed there are still voices of reason in the council. That matters." He pulled out a datapad and handed it to her. "I wanted you to see this before the official announcement tomorrow. Professional courtesy, since you've been honest with us." Thessia looked at the document on the pad. Her eyes widened as she read. "This is... You're announcing a parallel trade organization?" "The Human-Led Cooperative Alliance," Minjun confirmed. "We've been negotiating with partner species for 6 months. 214 species have agreed to join. It's a completely separate organization focused on mutual benefit, open membership, and practical cooperation rather than hierarchy. 214 species, Thessia repeated in shock. That's more than the Council has. Most are smaller civilizations that the Council overlooks, Minjun said. But 37 are current Council members who want to participate in both organizations. The Alliance launches officially next month. Thessia looked up at him. You're creating competition for the Council. We're creating an alternative, Minjun corrected. The Council can continue operating exactly as it always has, but species will now have choices about where they trade, who they partner with, and which diplomatic structures they join. Vraxis will see this as a declaration of war, Thessia warned. Let him, Minjun said, and for the first time Thessia heard steel in his voice. Humanity spent a year trying to work within Council systems. We proved ourselves a dozen different ways. We helped species in need, won a war, and contributed to galactic prosperity. In response, the Council rewrote their rules to specifically exclude us. He gestured toward the now empty chamber. We're done asking for permission. We're done waiting to be acknowledged. If the Council wants to pretend we don't exist, that's their choice. The rest of the galaxy is welcome to work with us instead. Minjun bowed respectfully to Thessia and left. She sat alone in the chamber, looking at the data pad. The implications were staggering. This wasn't just about humanity anymore. This was about the entire galactic order shifting. Tomorrow, the Council would face a choice: adapt or become irrelevant. Based on the vote today, Thessia knew which path they would choose. 5 years after humanity's first application to the Galactic Council, Counselor Thessia walked through corridors that felt emptier every day. The great chamber that once held 200 representatives now barely managed 100 on busy days. The rest had stopped attending, finding more pressing matters elsewhere. The Council faced a crisis that no amount of denial could hide anymore. 60% of galactic trade now flowed through the human-led cooperative alliance rather than traditional council networks. The numbers were undeniable because they appeared in every economic report, every shipping manifest, every trade analysis. Half of the Council's member species had established formal relationships with the alliance while maintaining their Council membership. 4 species had quietly approached human representatives, asking about leaving the Council entirely to join the alliance exclusively. The Council's influence, built over 3,000 years, was crumbling, and today Vraxis had finally called an emergency session to address what he termed human interference in Council affairs. Thessia took her seat and watched the chamber fill slowly. Vraxis arrived last. His silver skin now permanently darkened by stress. He had aged visibly over the past 5 years, his movements slower and more careful. This council is called to order, Vraxis began, his voice lacking its former authority. We face an existential threat to our organization and our way of life. Humanity has systematically undermined Council influence through their alliance. They have stolen our trade, poached our members, and disrupted the galactic order we've maintained for millennia. He activated the chamber displays, showing maps of trade routes. Blue lines represented Council-affiliated commerce. Red lines showed alliance trade. The blue lines looked like thin threads. The red lines dominated the map like a vast web. This is unacceptable, Vraxis continued. We cannot allow a species of observers to destroy everything the Council has built. I propose immediate sanctions against humanity and any species participating in their alliance. Sanctions? Admiral Krendak stood, his massive frame still imposing despite retirement from active military service. And how exactly would we enforce such sanctions? With what authority? The Council's authority, Vraxis said sharply. We are the legitimate governing body of galactic civilization. We're a voluntary organization, Krendax countered. We have no enforcement power beyond what our members grant us, and increasingly, our members are choosing to grant their cooperation to others. Before Vraxis could respond, the chamber doors opened. Ambassador Park Min-jun entered, but he wasn't alone. Behind him walked 12 other representatives, each wearing the silver and blue insignia of the Alliance. Vraxis's four arms moved in an angry gesture. You weren't invited to this session. Observers attend only when— I'm not here as an observer, Min-jun interrupted calmly. I'm here as the elected representative of the human-led cooperative alliance. These are my fellow alliance representatives. We've come with a formal proposal for the council. The chamber fell silent. Thesia leaned forward in her seat, curious despite her fatigue. Min-jun looked different somehow. Older, more confident, carrying himself with the authority of someone who no longer needed permission to speak. You have no right to address this council, Vraxis said, but his voice wavered slightly. Actually, Thesia said, standing, as a formal diplomatic organization representing 214 species, the Alliance has every right to address us. I move that we hear their proposal. Several other councilors voiced agreement. Vraxis looked around, seeing his support crumbling, and finally gestured sharply toward Min-jun. Very well. Speak. Min-jun walked to the chamber floor. The 12 Alliance representatives remained at the entrance, a silent reminder of the organization's scope. The holographic displays shifted, now showing the Alliance insignia. 5 years ago, Min-jun began, I stood in this same spot and asked for humanity to be recognized as equals. The Council refused. You granted us probationary observer status, a designation meant for species who haven't even left their home systems. He looked up at the tiers of counselors. We accepted that decision. We decided to prove ourselves through actions. We built colonies, established trade networks, helped species in need, won a war, and contributed to galactic prosperity. After each achievement, we asked to be reconsidered. Each time, this council found new reasons to deny us. The displays changed, showing the timeline of humanity's accomplishments alongside the council's responses. The pattern was clear and damning. Eventually, we realized something important, Min-jun continued. We didn't need the council's approval. Hundreds of other species felt the same way. They were tired of hierarchies based on age rather than achievement. They wanted partnerships based on mutual benefit rather than traditions. So we built something new together. The display showed the alliance structure, a council of rotating representatives, no permanent hierarchy, decisions made by majority vote regardless of species age or size. The human-led cooperative alliance has thrived, Min-jun said. Our members trade freely, share technology openly, and support each other genuinely. We've solved problems the Council ignored. We've welcomed species the Council overlooked. We've proven that there are other ways to organize galactic civilization. Vraxis stood abruptly. You've proven nothing, except that young species lack respect for tradition. Your alliance is chaos pretending to be order. It won't last. Perhaps, Min-jun agreed calmly. Or perhaps we're simply the future while the Council clings to the past. Time will tell. He gestured, and the display changed again. This time it showed a formal document with both Alliance and Council insignia at the top. We're not here to gloat about the Alliance's success, Min-jun said. We're here to offer the Council an opportunity. The Alliance invites the Galactic Council to join us as equal partners in a combined organization. The chamber erupted in shocked voices. Thesia stared at the document, reading quickly. It was a merger proposal, carefully structured to preserve Council traditions while integrating them into the Alliance framework. This proposal includes protections for Council customs and procedures, Min-jun continued over the noise. Your member species would maintain their status, your history and achievements would be honored, but you would operate as equals alongside Alliance members, not as superior rulers. Equals? Vraxis's voice carried pure outrage. The Council has governed galactic civilization for 3,000 years. We don't become equals with species who learned spaceflight last century." "Then you misunderstand what equality means," Minjun said quietly. "It doesn't diminish your history. It simply acknowledges that every species, regardless of age, deserves respect and voice in galactic affairs." "This is insulting," Vraxis said. "You're asking us to surrender our authority." "I'm asking you to share it," Minjun corrected. "The galaxy is bigger than any one organization. There's room for different approaches, different ideas, different voices. The Alliance isn't trying to destroy the Council. We're offering a partnership that benefits everyone." Admiral Krendax stood again. "What happens if we refuse?" Minjun met his gaze steadily. "Then nothing changes. The Alliance continues operating. The Council continues operating. Species continue choosing which organization serves their interests better. Based on current trends, more will choose the Alliance over time. Eventually, the Council becomes a historical curiosity rather than a functioning organization." "You're threatening us," Vraxis accused. "I'm describing reality," Minjun replied. "The Council spent 5 years denying that reality, but facts don't care about denial. You have a choice now: adapt and remain relevant, or refuse and fade away. Either way, the galaxy is moving forward." Thessia stood. "I support hearing more details about this proposal. The Alliance has proven itself to be stable and effective. Perhaps cooperation serves everyone's interests." "Cooperation?" Vraxis turned on her. "This is surrender. They're asking us to abandon everything we've built, everything we stand for." "They're asking us to evolve," Thessia countered. "Species that refuse to adapt to changing circumstances become extinct. Organizations are no different." The debate raged for hours. Counselors argued passionately on both sides. Some saw the proposal as salvation, a way to remain relevant in a changing galaxy. Others viewed it as betrayal of everything the Council represented. Finally, Vraxis called for a vote. The chamber fell silent as counselors registered their decisions. Thessia voted in favor of beginning negotiations with the Alliance. She watched the count rise on the display. The final result appeared: 53 in favor, 47 against. The vote was split almost perfectly down the middle. "The vote fails to reach the required 60% majority for major policy changes," Vraxis announced, and Thessia heard relief in his voice. "The Council rejects the Alliance proposal. We will continue operating independently, as we have for 3,000 years." Minjun nodded as if he had expected this outcome. "Very well. The invitation remains open if the Council changes its mind. The Alliance will continue welcoming any species who wish to join us." He bowed formally and left with the other Alliance representatives. Thessia watched them go, feeling a profound sense of loss. The Council had just rejected its best chance at remaining relevant. Over the next 6 months, Thessia watched the consequences unfold. 4 Council species formally withdrew their membership to join the Alliance exclusively. 8 more reduced their Council participation to minimal levels, while expanding Alliance cooperation. The Great Chamber grew emptier. Sessions that once drew hundreds of attendees now barely managed 40 or 50. Important votes were delayed repeatedly due to lack of quorum. Council trade networks continued declining. Traditional shipping companies either adapted by partnering with Alliance members or went bankrupt. The Council's economic influence shrank monthly. Meanwhile, the Alliance thrived. New species joined weekly. Their trade networks expanded into previously uncontacted regions of space. Alliance medical teams responded to crises faster than Council bureaucracy could organize meetings. Thessia requested a meeting with Vraxis. She found him in his office, surrounded by reports that all told the same story of decline. He looked defeated, his silver skin now permanently dark. "I'm resigning from the Council," Thessia told him. "Several other members are doing the same. We're joining the Alliance." Vraxis didn't look surprised. Abandoning us in our time of need? I'm trying to salvage what I can, Thessia said. The Council had a chance to adapt. We chose denial instead. I won't go down with a sinking ship when there are alternatives. This is humanity's fault, Vraxis said bitterly. They destroyed everything. No, Thessia said firmly. We destroyed ourselves. Humanity just gave species an alternative to our rigidity. They showed that other approaches were possible. We could have acknowledged that and adapted. Instead, we pretended they didn't matter until it was too late. She placed a data pad on his desk. Min Jun asked me to give you this. It's another copy of the merger proposal. He said the invitation still stands if you change your mind. Vraxis pushed the pad away without looking at it. Never. Thessia left his office and walked through the council chambers one last time. The great hall that once symbolized galactic unity now felt like a museum, a monument to an age that had passed. 6 months later, Thessia attended her first Alliance assembly. The gathering took place on Unity Station, the massive human-built facility that had become the Alliance's unofficial capital. Representatives from over 300 species filled the halls, discussing trade, technology, and mutual cooperation. She spotted Ambassador Park Min-jun talking with a group of newly arrived species, welcoming them with the same patience and respect he had shown the Council years ago. He noticed her and smiled. "Councillor Thessia," he said warmly, "or should I say Representative Thessia now?" "Just Thessia is fine," she replied. "Titles matter less here." "One of many differences," Min-jun agreed. "How are you adjusting?" "It's strange," Thessia admitted. "The Alliance makes decisions so quickly. No endless debates about tradition or proper procedure. Just identify the problem, discuss solutions, vote, and implement. It's efficient." "Sometimes efficiency matters more than tradition," Min-jun said. "Though we do try to respect our members' customs and histories, we're not trying to erase where species come from. We just don't let it define where they're going." Thessia looked around at the diverse assembly. "What about the Council? What happens to them?" Min-jun's expression grew thoughtful. "They'll continue operating as long as their remaining members want them to. Maybe 50 species, maybe fewer. They'll handle their internal affairs and maintain their traditions. The galaxy is big enough for different organizations." "And if they fade away completely?" "Then they'll be remembered as an important part of galactic history," Min-jun said. 3,000 years of maintaining order is nothing to dismiss. They did tremendous good. They just couldn't adapt when the galaxy changed around them. A chime sounded, indicating the assembly was beginning. Thessia and Min-jun took their seats among hundreds of other representatives. There were no tiers here, no hierarchy of seating. Everyone sat as equals. The assembly began with a human facilitator calling for proposals. Species raised issues and suggested solutions. Votes happened quickly and efficiently. Thessia found herself contributing ideas, her input valued the same as species who had been spacefaring for millennia. During a break, she checked her messages and found one from Vraxis. She almost deleted it, then curiosity made her open it. The message was short. "The council chambers are nearly empty now. 10 species remain. We're discussing dissolution. I wanted you to know. You were right about everything. I just couldn't admit it until it was too late." Thessia sat quietly, feeling no triumph, only sadness. The council had been a force for stability and order for so long. Its end marked the close of an era. But as she looked around Unity Station, seeing hundreds of species working together as equals, she felt something else too. Hope. The galaxy was entering a new age, one built on cooperation rather than hierarchy, achievement rather than tradition, and adaptation rather than denial. Humanity hadn't destroyed the old order. They had simply shown that new orders were possible. The species who accepted that truth thrived. Those who denied it faded away. The assembly resumed, and Thessia returned her attention to the present. There was work to do, problems to solve, and a future to build together. The past deserved respect, but the galaxy moved forward with or without permission, and for the first time in years, Thessia felt optimistic about where it was headed.